Hello everyone, this is chapter 6 part 1. In this chapter we'll be talking about elasticity. Before we get started, let's take a look at this picture and PowerPoint slide. So the topic is elasticity. What does that mean? So when I say something is elastic, the first thing that comes to my mind is like a rubber band. Okay, and I always feel like rubber bands, if they're thin rubber bands, they're pretty elastic, and if it's a very thick rubber band, just like the one that you use in a Pilates class or in circuit training classes, I'll tell you how I use them because I can do pull-ups. Okay, I need to use these thick bands. So thick bands are not very elastic, but if you imagine like super thin rubber bands, they are more elastic. That means you put some force. Okay, let's say this is a thin rubber band and this is a thick rubber band. So you put equal force, the response, let's say this thin rubber band gets pretty long, right, when you pull it from sides, but the thick rubber band doesn't respond too much. So what we say is that when you put equal force on two things, if one responds more, in this case I'm talking about response means how the size actually is going to go up. So this one responds more, therefore we say it's more elastic in our daily lives. Here though, we are going to apply this concept of elasticity to economic concepts. So here is a woman pumping gas to her car, and she's looking at the gas pump like, what is going on? So some people have argued that consumers don't vary or change the quantity of gas they buy as price changes. Why? Because the number of miles they need to drive to get to work or school or to run errands is roughly constant. So just keep in mind, we say that gas demand is relatively inelastic. That means if you change the price, I'm unable to drop my consumption. Okay, so in part 1, actually, we're going to do the introduction to elasticity. What does it mean? The definition of elasticity is elasticity quantifies or measures the response in one variable, okay, when another changes. In most cases, another variable that changes initially is going to be price, income, and price of substitutes or price of complements, okay? And we will look at the response in one variable. We're going to look at the impact of all these variables and quantity of that good demanded, quantity of that good supply, or the changes in demand. And we will also talk about cross price elasticities, but don't worry about those for now. So let's remember law of demand. In previous parts we talked about law of demand, basically summarized by the demand curve, remember, and if price goes up, quantity demanded goes down, or vice versa, right? But here's a question: what is the size of the effect of the price change on quantity demanded? So how big are the reactions? Let's say I increase the price by 10%, okay? If the quantity demanded goes down by 50%, that's a huge reaction, right? So I increase the price of, let's say I have a coffee shop, I increase the price of coffee by 10%, my sales gone down by 50%. Wow, that's such a huge impact on my sales. That's going to be really bad for me. So you really want to know how big are the reactions going to be. So if you know elasticity of the good you're selling, you are good to go. You can make educated decisions on, whether you should increase the price of product you're selling. So also, we need to know elasticities of goods and services to shape government policies. For instance, let's say you want to impose tax on cigarettes, okay? Remember the previous chapter, this was chapter 4. this was very last part. In this part, we talked about the impact of a tax on cigarettes, and we found that quantity demanded had gone down, remember, from 2 million packs a day to 1.8 million. Okay, so I know for sure when you impose taxes basically increase the effective price of cigarettes. Effective price goes up. So you increase the price of cigarettes to discourage especially teen smoking. Teenagers, you don't want them to be smoking. So how big the impact will be? Quantity demanded will go down, I know for sure, but what is the percentage change in quantity demanded? Is it a lot? Is it a little bit? Let's say I increase the price of cigarettes by 25%. I put a positive sign for increase, okay? As a response, let's say teen smoking has gone down by only 5 percentage points. So if this is the case, I would be a little bit discouraged, right? You're increasing the price of smoking a lot, but by 25%, but people are dropping their consumptions. Yes, they do, but by only 5 percentage points. That's very low. We also, okay, let me erase this part a little bit. So the question is, I'm increasing the price of cigarettes. Will quantity demanded go down a lot or just a little bit? That's the main question. Before we move on to the next example, let me just tell you something. You actually have this policy to have big impact. You don't want just a little bit, but you want quantity demanded to go down a lot, okay? So next example, increase in the price of product. This is exactly the example I gave you. Let's say I own a coffee shop, right? And I increase the price of coffee by 10%. Quantity demanded, if quantity demanded goes down by, let's say, 50%, you are in trouble. But if you increase the price by 10% and quantity demanded just goes down by 3%, that's nothing. I can deal with this, right? Because the 10% increase in price will actually overcome this drop. So just remember the total revenue definition. Total revenue, this is chapter 3, we talked about this, and the supply side. Total revenue is price of the product. Let's say I sell coffees for $3 per cup, right? Times how much you sell, quantity of coffee demanded. So let's say 50 cups per hour. So basically I'm making a total revenue is 150. Okay, so if I increase price, let's say to $5, you better be careful what you're doing, because if you increase price to $5 and you only have 10 customers left, quantity demanded, look at this, your total revenue goes down to only $50. Okay, so that is a very bad, poor choice on your part. You don't really have to increase the price to see what's gonna happen. If you knew the elasticity of the product you're selling, okay, then you would know before even implementing this price change and losing all your customers. Okay, so this is a quick introduction to elasticity, and in next part we'll discuss other aspects of elasticity.